Welcome into another edition of the DFO DFS Report. Happy Tuesday, December the 17th, everybody. Okay, we're not going to waste too much time because we're already quite late, but the charts took a long time today for some reason. All of a sudden, I told Zach, I'm like, yeah, I should be ready to go for 4 o'clock. And I looked down and it was 3 o'clock, and I was like, I will not be ready. And then it just kept dragging out, dragging out, dragging out. So can't go live, can't do the show without the charts. Charts just finished. Here we go. We got 10 games on our hands tonight. Please smash that like button if you can. We got 10 games. Here's the goalies. Andrei Vasilevsky likely to get the start for the Tampa Bay Lightning. It'll be Jet Greaves again for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Alec Nedeljkovic gets the call for the Pittsburgh Penguins. It'll be Darcy Kemper likely to get the call for the LA Kings. Sam Montembeault versus Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, two of the best names in the game, going head-to-head. Confirmed for Montembeault, likely for Luukkonen. Kochetkov versus Sorokin, likely for Kochetkov. Confirmed for Ilya Sorokin. Unconfirmed who gets the nod for the Nashville Predators. We are projecting to see UC Stars will be Igor Shesterkin for the New York Rangers. Jordan Binnington gets the nod for the St. Louis Blues up against Jacob Markstrom for the Devils. Likely going to see Arvid Soderblom for the Chicago Blackhawks. Logan Thompson projected to get the start for the Capitals, second half of a back-to-back for them. Dustin Wolf confirmed to get start for the Calgary Flames. It'll be Jeremy Swayman for the Boston Bruins. Likely going to see Joey Daccord versus Linus Ullmark, who's been absolutely scorching hot as of late. Alexander Georgiev with a new mask in the San Jose Sharks crease up against likely Connor Hellebuyck on the front end of a back-to-back for the Winnipeg Jets. Those are your projected or confirmed or likely 20 starting goalies for tonight's game. Let's start at the tippy top with the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Columbus Blue Jackets. Probably my favorite game of the night. Let's start it off with a bang. Before we do, listen to our guy John and smash that like button. Here we go. The Tampa Bay Lightning 3.8 implied total minus 233 home favorites against the Blue Jackets. Zach, there's a couple teams in the NHL that are just way different on home ice, and the Blue Jackets are one of those teams. When you get them out on the road, they are not nearly as good. Their offense isn't nearly as potent. They just aren't the same. I will say that we got their lines from their team account, from their team website, and they look like the lines we've seen recently. In their most recent defeat, they went back to Voronkov, Monahan, Marchenko on that top line. That's what I had projected for the last 24, 48 hours until the team account came out and showed these lines. I'm not 100% sure that these are what they're actually going to be. I feel like we are going to see Voronkov, Monahan, and Marchenko tonight, but just keep that in mind if you do plan on playing the Blue Jackets tonight heading into the night. You might want to build Voronkov, Monahan, Marchenko just because that's obviously the more expensive build, and then pivot. But most of my interest comes on the Tampa Bay Lightning side of things. The matchups for this top nine are really, really good. Mostly going to see a lot of the top line of the Lightning up against the top line of the Jets, or of the Blue Jackets, excuse me. The middle sixes will face off against each other for the most part, and then a lot of fourth line against fourth line. Obviously, Tampa Bay 1 has been absolutely outstanding. Their numbers are really, really good, but they're actually worse than Tampa Bay 2 offensively. The numbers, at least, underlying metrics. Obviously, the full correlation on the top power play unit certainly makes Tampa Bay 1 a much more appealing play overall, but I absolutely love Tampa 2 tonight. Tampa 1 especially draws an absurd amount of ownership tonight, 23.5% for the full stack, which is by far and away the highest owned line on the slate. The next highest owned line is Nashville 1 at 9.6%. So if you're looking for a decent pivot option off that chalk and a line in this game, Tampa Bay 2 looks unbelievable. Hagel's price up to $7K. Cirelli 4,500. Connor Geeky's looked really good on this line too at 2,700. They're 15,100 to full stack. The matchup is glorious. Like I said, they're going to see a lot of this middle six for the Blue Jackets. It doesn't get much worse defensively than that middle six. So I love Tampa Bay 1 still, don't get me wrong, but if you are looking to pivot off that chalk at all, you can stick right with the same team and go right to Tampa Bay 2. Obviously, Tampa Bay 1 looks a little bit better because their power play stack tonight grades out second best overall. They fully correlate on that top power play unit. There's a lot to like about Tampa Bay 1, don't get me wrong. I think that I'll still probably be over the field on Tampa. It just feels like an all-in night on Tampa 1 and 2 for me. I absolutely love both these spots, but Tampa 2 is a really, really good pivot spot. Zach, I texted you this afternoon, and I was like, oh my God, Tampa Bay 2, their underlying metrics are insane. Then I did the matchups. I was like, oh my God, their matchups insane. Like, I couldn't be more in love with Tampa 2. I've been playing them like crazy lately, and they are both just scorching hot, Cirelli and Hagel, and they are probably going to stay hot tonight. I've probably rambled a little bit more than I should have, but I'm just so in love with this matchup for Tampa tonight.
Well, I think you got more than enough reason to be rambling on about it. I mean, it does look like an absolutely incredible spot here. I think, first and foremost, one of the most appealing things about Tampa 2 tonight is they're literally coming in at a quarter of the ownership as the top line. I mean, it's an incredibly huge difference when you're talking about a 10-game slate. 24% ownership for the top line of the Lightning. Like, look, it's rightly deserved. Don't get me wrong. I mean, these are three incredible players here in Jake Gensel, Braden Point, and Nikita Kucherov, who really are firing on all cylinders right now. They've all had tons of success against the Columbus Blue Jackets. I'm going to be meeting the field on Tampa 1 tonight, but I'm also going to be really over the field on Tampa 2. Especially in some of the different contests that I'm playing here on this slate tonight. So I think it's a really interesting way to get yourself different and still getting exposure to that same game. It's going to be Jack Reeves in the crease for the Columbus Blue Jackets tonight. 2 games played so far this season from him, 906 save percentage, 0.4 goals saved above expected. It's worth noting that the last time these two teams met too, a couple of weeks ago, it ended in a 7-6 win for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Granted, it was Jonas Johansson going up against Elvis Merzlikins in that game. But I think there's, some proof there that like these can be high scoring games in general between these two teams. And, you take a look at the Columbus side of things here in this matchup. I don't entirely hate getting to Columbus 1 here in this game either. They're coming in for very, very low ownership. I'd be comfortable partnering them with Zach Werenski on the blue line here. I think it's an interesting spot for the Blue Jackets. You really don't have to do much to get over the field in a 20 max on Columbus 1, given the ownership that they're projecting for, and what really looks to be like a fairly high scoring game environment with a pace score of 100.6.
Yeah, I mean the pace just in general here tonight is relatively low across the board. So this is far and away the highest. I guess not far and away, but definitely the highest pace game of the night. I have a little bit less interest in Columbus than you do. I think that's been kind of the general consensus for you and I for the most part this season. I don't think I've been on as high on Columbus as you have more often than not. I am a little bit concerned just about their road woes. They score 1.3 fewer goals on the road, which is just stunning. And then, like you said, yeah, good matchup, good, a good environment. But Andre Vasilevsky is obviously a bit tough to beat. So, like I said off the top here, if it is Voronkov, Marchenko, and Monahan, we see that in warmups. I do think that that's a pretty good, like we saw how amazing they've been. The matchup's good enough. I think I would be interested in playing that line for a couple of reasons. Just one, that they're really, really good. And two, not a lot of people are probably ready for that and ready to make that pivot. So that line as a full stack is probably going to come in incredibly low owned. If that line's together, I'll probably pivot to them a little bit. But if it's the way that lines are currently configured, I just don't think that there's as much upside there with Van Riemsdyk, Monahan, and Kent Johnson. They've been pretty solid, but not nearly as good as what we've seen from the other lines that Monahan's played with so far this season. I just want to find Columbus one. They grade out 16th best overall currently as they stand with Van Riemsdyk, Monahan, and Kent Johnson. So you always talk about that top 15 kind of as a threshold, and I agree. I'll probably be off of Columbus unless we see that warm-ups lineup change. As I mentioned, really, really good power play score here for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Not so much for the Columbus Blue Jackets side of things. Zach, any final thoughts on this game before we move on to game number 2?
Building around the power play, getting some Brandon Hagel there, I think is also a good way to get different in this spot. He's obviously drawing the most ownership of anybody on Tampa 2, rightly so because of that power play there, but an interesting spot nonetheless. Also worth mentioning, what's the status of Victor Hedman tonight? I think game time decision. Something interesting to monitor there too with Darren Radish potentially sliding up to the top unit.
I was just going to get to that because Marsharks asked, is Hedman playing? He is a game time decision. He did partake in the morning skate. He was skating on the top pairing with Darren Radish. All signs pointing towards Hedman being back, but still a game time decision. You're going to have to make sure with that in warmups. That being said, too, he grades out tremendously well. Actually, the number one defenseman on the entire slate tonight at just $6,500. So if Hedman's in the lineup at just 5.2% ownership, really, really like Victor Hedman tonight. Do you play full Tampa 2 line, or do you prefer a 2-man or swap Geeky with a defenseman? I think that it all depends on your build. If you need that salary relief, I'm fine with keeping Geeky in. He's been fine. He's a talented young player. The line, like these line stats are what they are with Geeky. This isn't with Kucherov or with anybody. This is Geeky, Cirelli, and Hagel. They've been unbelievable as a trio, so I don't mind including Geeky in that stack at all. If you don't feel comfortable with it, I have no problem pivoting off of him. If you want to go elsewhere, that's fine too. There's a lot of other good value options on tonight's slate, but I actually like Geeky quite a bit. So I'll full stack them. I'll probably have a mixture of full stacks and mini stacks with Tampa Bay 2. How about you? Any different there, Zach?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I'm keeping Geeky on there. $2,700. That's some really nice salary relief. Look, I mean, Tampa 2, they're $15,100 to full stack tonight. That's really, really cheap for a line that's in a really great spot, even with Hagel's salary coming up to 7K now.
Yeah, just trying to pull up Geeky's numbers here really quickly just to see what he's done recently. His last 5 games, 2 goals, 1 assist, 9 shots on goal. The usage is still kind of modest at 13, 12, 13 minutes ice time on ice. So yeah, like he's not the perfect option, but again, that correlation at $2,700 is kind of tough to beat. Okay, Pittsburgh and LA, the Kings, 3.1 implied total -136 road favorites in Pittsburgh. This one's a little bit tricky for me, right? Like I think that the Pittsburgh Penguins are really one of the most difficult teams to kind of gauge on a night-to-night basis. They seem to be very volatile, and a line or a team as a whole that's kind of difficult to gauge. The one thing that has been pretty consistent with the Penguins, I guess, is that they've just been pretty bad defensively all year long. I do think that the LA Kings are in a pretty good spot tonight. The LA Kings, they aren't a team that's going to just kind of get into these track meets and score super, be in super high scoring games, but the offense has been pretty solid as of late. 5 goals against the Rangers. Everyone scores against the Rangers. They didn't score against the Devils, but then 3 against the Islanders, 4 against the Wild, 3 against the Stars, 5 against the Senators in their most recent games. The offense has been humming a bit. They've won 7 of their last 8 games as well. We always talk about it with the Kings. It's kind of hard to figure out exactly which line is going to go off tonight. It's kind of the same story tonight. They all have similar matchup scores. To me, LA2 is one that really pops off, right? Their numbers have been outstanding. They haven't necessarily been getting there lately. I've played them and kind of been disappointed at times because they haven't quite lived up to these numbers. LA1 looks really intriguing as well with Alex Turcotte up there. He's a player that I've seen a lot of LA Kings fans asking on Twitter, like they need to stop burying this guy in the top 6. He's a talented offensive player that needs to be playing with talented offensive players. And that line's performed extremely well with him there. And he's at minimum price. So I really like Turcotte as a value option tonight. Like, he was kind of the guy that I was thinking of. If you want to leave Geeky off and try to find somewhere else to go, I think Turcotte is a really solid option. This line really not seeing a ton of ownership tonight either at 5.7%. We don't love Anze Kopitar from a DFS perspective because he doesn't have much of a floor, but at 5,800, I think he's okay tonight. If you want a full stack, you want to go Turcotte, Kempe, mini stacks, that's fine too. The second line grades out right behind them. Fiala's been pretty quiet as of late, but projected for 11.5% ownership, so the public not afraid of him whatsoever. Dano has been pretty solid lately, $3,500, really good price tag. Laferriere has been kind of hot and cold so far this year, $4,500. I think both these lines are pretty similar depending on your build. I don't really mind going with either of them. The third line popped the other day. I probably won't be stacking the full line, third line too much, but I really love the floor you get with a guy like Warren Fogle at $3,600 as well. So the Kings have definitely piqued my interest, recently, and then the matchups in this game are really good. You got Alex Nedeljkovic getting the start. I feel pretty good about targeting the Kings tonight. Just it is always really difficult to figure out which way to go. Like with the Lightning, you're like, okay, the top line is clearly the high upside line. The second line is clearly kind of just your pivot spot that has pretty good upside, but is also cheaper. Where the Kings, they're kind of all the same price. You don't really know which way to go. Who do you prefer in this one?
Yeah, I lean towards the second line, which is kind of typically what I do. I mean, Fiala, Dano, Laferriere, it just feels like you got a higher ceiling with those 3 guys. I will say I don't mind LA1 tonight. I think they're in a great spot here as well. Kopitar's had success against the Penguins in the past, 8 goals, 23 points in 25 games. And that's exactly what you need from Anze Kopitar if you're going to play him in any one of your lineups. Adrian Kempe, 8 goals, 12 games played. Don't mind that whatsoever. I'm going to have exposure to both of these lines tonight. I don't think I'm going to go too crazy with things. But it does seem like a decent spot to get over the field on. The top line grading out with 5.7% ownership tonight. Second line, 7.8%. Again, pretty easy to match or get over the field in this spot here. It also feels like it could be just a good low-owned spot to kind of get over the field to, right? I mean, the matchup scores are strong for the Kings. The line stats are strong for the Kings here. It feels like a really strong spot for them as a whole. Going up against a Pittsburgh top 6 that, as you can see here, has really, really struggled defensively. So I think it's a nice spot here for the Kings. The Penguin side of things, I'm not really feeling too great about. I think there's an argument to maybe mix in a little bit of Pittsburgh one here as kind of the line to target. They have an 8.9 matchup score, which is obviously pretty horrendous. But the truth of the matter is they're going to see 41% of their ice time going up against the top line of the Kings, and they are their worst defensive line, but still a pretty solid one. So I think if you're looking to get really different, I don't hate the idea of mixing in a little bit of Pittsburgh one, just because they are such a volatile line. Like, who knows? They could pop off at any time. And Sidney Crosby, Brian Rust, both are point per game players against the Kings in their career. So I think it's an interesting spot. Nothing to go crazy with, but I think I might mix 5% Pittsburgh one in tonight.
Yeah, like I think that the one thing to look at here is they grade out 14th best overall, and that's really low for a line that has as good of numbers as these guys have. But they've been on a heater, man. I don't mind them at all either. Only in like 20 maxes, maybe mixing in about 5%. It's just a really, really difficult matchup. The Kings are so good defensively. So yeah, like I've played Pittsburgh one a lot recently. I really like this line. They've been just absolutely outstanding. Brian Russ has been, I think he's at 12 points his last 9 games, something like that. So you got a pretty good floor with this line too with Raquel. Russ shot volume. Crosby's obviously a stud. So yeah, I don't mind mixing them in a little bit. I would be a little bit cautious. I wouldn't go too heavy, just given how difficult this matchup is. But literally seeing 1.5% ownership. So play them in one of your 20 lineups tonight, and you'll be well north of the field. In terms of the power play, not a whole lot to write home about here. The Penguins' power play is actually pretty solid. 11th, they face a really tough penalty kill for the Kings, number 30 in the NHL over the last 10 games. The Kings' power play is really kind of what holds me back from going kind of heavy on the Kings tonight. Really, really bad power play, 30th in the last 10 games, going up against the 8th ranked PK. It is worth mentioning, somebody pointed out in the chat too, Marcus Pettersson will not be available tonight for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's week to week, and he's really kind of their only good defensive defenseman. He was kind of like their shutdown pair. Now, with him out, I tweeted about it yesterday. They put Matt Grzelcyk and Erik Karlsson together, and that is going to be an absolute adventure. So, yeah, I think that the Penguins are going to have an even more difficult time defensively than they have recently. I just want to point out too that Pittsburgh's this top line, obviously not a great defensive score. The second line, really, really bad defensive matchup is defensive stats as well. So, you look at the second and third line, they're the ones that are going to kind of face the majority of those two lines tonight. And that's why I think I agree with you in having a little bit more interest on LA2 than LA1. But I love Turcotte as a one-off. I like mixing in Kempe as well. But full stacking with Kopitar always feels a little bit weird, just because he has no floor at all. But he has been picking up points. Like I feel like we kind of shit on Anze Kopitar a lot, and it's just like he's an amazing real-life hockey player. But from a DFS perspective, maybe he doesn't always get there. But like he literally just puts up points consistently. Like, it's been crazy how good he's been. So I don't want to disregard what he's done. He only has 12 shots in his last 10 games. That's the kind of stats that we're talking about. But he has 13 points in those last 10 games. If you take a look back even further, 25 points in his last 20 games. Like, he's been great. He just, if he doesn't put up points, he doesn't really get there, I guess, which is probably the case for everybody. So just has no floor. Long-winded way of saying he has no floor, but at $5,800, I do think that the price has gotten to a point where I'm fine including him tonight because those numbers are really, really impressive. Okay, Montreal and Buffalo tonight. This is hilarious. I mean, these two teams are just an absolute nightmare situation. The Sabres on a 10-game losing streak. The Habs have only won 4 in their last 10. These two teams combining for 4 wins in their last 20 games. Really, really gross. The Sabres, despite being on a 10-game losing streak, are minus 123 road favorites. Just goes to show what the sportsbooks think of Montreal. Zach, this is another game I was really texting you a lot about before the show. It's funny that Montreal has the better matchup scores, and really it's because the Sabres are just terrible defensively across the board. But the top 6 for the Montreal Canadiens, these defensive numbers are hilarious. So yeah, you're obviously not a lot of hard matching going on from the Montreal side of things tonight. So basically any line that you look at from the Buffalo Sabres side of things is probably going to see 50% of their ice time against that top 6 of the Canadiens. So pretty good spot here for pretty much any line in this game. You take a look at the offensive metrics of the Montreal Canadiens. Not really sure why they decided to break up that new hook Suzuki Caulfield line because it was actually working, and then now it just all looks terrible. So I don't really have a whole lot of interest in this Montreal side of things. I will kind of go back over to the Buffalo side of things. Obviously with the sports books liking them, I think there's reason to buy in a little bit that they can bounce back in a nice environment here. The top line specifically is the one that grades out the best. So I don't know how much full stacking I'm going to do of Buffalo one, but I really, really like getting to Tage Thompson tonight. $8,200, just 5% ownership. Zach Benson up there at $3,100 keeps the price down. Tuck's been great, but at $6,900, he's really got to have a good night. So for me, mostly Tage Thompson one-offs here in this game is probably the way I'm going to go. I don't mind getting to Buffalo too. Peterka, Cousins, and Quinn at 12,500. I think they're a pretty good value option at just 5% owned tonight. Their underlying metrics this year have not been very good, but last year we saw these guys be unbelievable. So I'm okay buying in that the talent will eventually win out here in a really, really good matchup. So I don't mind the top 6 here from the Sabres tonight as I click on the wrong tab. The power plays were ranked 8th and 9th tonight. Zach, how do you feel about the Sabres in this one?
I feel pretty good about the Sabres, which is kind of a weird thing to say about the Buffalo Sabres right now. I don't know how anybody could really feel good about this team or this organization. Thankfully there's lots of palm trees though in Buffalo, so that really makes up for it.
Yes.
I really like the look of this top line here tonight. I mean, Tage Thompson is Tage Thompson. He has been great against the Montreal Canadiens in his career. 8 goals, 15 points in 13 games played. It feels like just a bit of a smash spot here for the Buffalo Sabres. They're not really drawing a lot of ownership, and neither are the Montreal Canadiens. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. It doesn't have the highest pace score here, 96.3, but I think there's enough reason for this to be a bit of a higher scoring game. You take a look at these last 10 games between these two teams, it's averaging like something like 6.5, 7 point goals scored per game. There's been some really, really high scoring games between these two teams in the last number of years here. So it kind of has the feeling of one of those games again here where it could really just kind of open up offensively. For me, I think I got more of my interest in Buffalo 1. I think you're just getting a bit of a higher ceiling with Tage Thompson and Alex Tuck versus the look of that second line for the Sabres. That's kind of the way that I'm looking at this one. I'm going to be over the field, I think, here on the Sabres. Again, not very hard to. They're only projecting for like 5% ownership tonight. I've got a little bit of interest in Montreal 1 as well. Just kind of take advantage of a bad Sabres team here. The second, third, and fourth lines of the Habs have been just terrible, right? So I don't think there's any real reason to get there. Maybe some Patrick Laine one-offs at $5,800. I mean, he's been shooting the lights out since he's returned from injury. He's looked absolutely great. So I don't mind like a Laine one-off, but I think, Montreal 1, 5, maybe 10% ownership tops, I think is a fine play tonight.
Yeah, Patrick Laine one-off's pretty interesting. 7 shots on goal against the Jets the other night. The shot volume's been really, really good for him since coming back. Don't mind that. Montreal 1 grades at 17th best overall, 17,100, seen about 6% ownership. I don't know, man. Like, I just don't understand why this line is just so bad compared to what they were last year. But despite not having really any metrics to speak of, they've still scored 5.2 goals for per 60 together. So it's a line that's had success. I don't disagree with you. This game, here, let's just pull up the old trusty team sheet here. Look at the defensive metrics for both teams last 10 games. Defensively, just absolutely atrocious. A lot of red across the board here. So yeah, this game, obviously, I think there's enough game breakers that can take advantage of the really poor defense that both these sides play. So yeah, somebody's asked, what about JJ as a one-off? I'm probably the wrong guy to ask. Like, I'm probably the biggest JJ Peterka truther that there is. Just has not looked like the same player this year, at least recently. Really good start to the year, but yeah, like I still believe in JJ Peterka, the player. It's hard to trust. The shot volume's kind of evaporated recently, which is difficult. But yeah, like I feel at 12,500, this is still a decent line to target as a full stack. And at $4,900, I think Peterka in this matchup is a fine play. Not probably my favorite, but just because the floor is kind of evaporated. But yeah, I do think that he's in a good spot here tonight. Again, 8th and 9th best power plays. Any final thoughts on this one before we move to the Hurricanes and the Islanders?
No, that covers it for me here.
So I didn't really know this. Like, you look at Hurricanes Islanders and be like, man, blah, low scoring, low event, whatever, right? 4 of their last 5 meetings have hit the over, which is set 5.5 tonight. Their last 5 meetings, which is 4 last year and the first one this year, have averaged 7.4 goals per game. I wouldn't have anticipated that, but they've been fairly high scoring matchups, which is pretty surprising. I only have Tage anytime goal tonight. I'm super behind that. Love that play tonight. Matchups for this game, not great for the top 6 of the Hurricanes. Not pretty good for the bottom 6. Not great across the board for the Islanders. The Hurricanes, man, really can't find anything. They just every game we sit here and we talk about a totally different line combination set here for the Hurricanes. Tonight is no different. Robinson, Aho, Jarvis, Svechnikov, Kotkaniemi, Netchas. And you got the familiar Carrier, Stahl, Martinick on the third line. From a line stats perspective, all pretty good, right? They're all solid. Like, my point about the matchups being good or these being high scoring games at the start, like, I want to have interest in this game. I just am having a hard time kind of finding that avenue. Um, for me, like, it's probably coming in on the Carolina side of things. I have a hard time really trusting the Islanders as a whole. I know you really never play the Islanders. They've burned you several times, which I think is fine. Chekhov just hasn't been great. So that's why it's like, okay, like, I have a little bit of interest in the Islanders, but probably not enough to get there. I think there's just better spots on the slate. So most of my interest probably coming on this Carolina Hurricane side of things tonight. The best matchup in the top six is the Aho line. So I'll probably go there a little bit, but I don't know, man. Like, this is kind of just a weird game for me. The public feels pretty similar. Carolina 1, just 3% ownership. Carolina 3 seeing no ownership. Carolina 2 seeing no ownership, really 3%. The Islanders not really seeing much of anything, either 4 and 2%. It is worth mentioning that I also have no idea what the Hurricane or the Islanders lines are going to look like. We've got Bo Horvat as a game time decision tonight. In the morning skate, he skated on the third line, and Duclair was on the top line, but Duclair got ruled out. So even the Islander beat reporters have no clue what's going to happen tonight. This is one option. But yeah, if you're playing the Islanders tonight, just keep that in mind. Zach, I'm obviously just rambling and pretty indecisive here about this game. Do you have any more concrete ideas on what to do with it?
I got an idea. Build around the Carolina Hurricanes on the power play. They come in with the fourth best matchup on the slate, fourth ranked power play, going up against the 32nd ranked penalty kill. The issue with that, obviously, is that the Islanders are incredibly disciplined, only 2.1 times shorthanded per game. But I think when you look at this game as a whole, I think that's kind of the way to build. I mean, if you're going to be building around this unit, it's pretty easy to do. Andrei Svechnikov, Martin Netchus on the second line, Sebastian Aho, Seth Jarvis on the first line, Shane Gostisbehere is the defenseman. He's going to play with both of those lines at 5-on-5 as well. I think if you're going to build, that's kind of how I would build around the Carolina Hurricane side of things. I agree. Like, I've got interest in this game. It's got a nice pace score, which feels a little weird to say about a Hurricanes Islanders game. The same breath too, like the Islanders side, I don't know what to do with them. Like, I agree. Like, the matchups are terrible. The Hurricanes can really suffocate teams. They haven't seemed to be able to do so against the Islanders in the past. And if you look at the players that are in the top six of the Islanders, they have all had success against the Hurricanes in their career. Anders Lee, 10 goals and 26 points in 35 games. Bo Horvat, 21 games played, 10 goals, 20 points. Matthew Barzal, 4 goals, 18 points, 21 games played. Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri, 0.7 points per game as well. Like, they've found ways to produce against the Hurricanes. Again, like you said, like, they've just burnt me so many times. I just don't know how I can feel confident going to the well. What's interesting is that Barzal is $4,200 tonight. He's coming in really cheap, drawing 8.2% ownership, which is the most of any of the forwards in this game. I don't know, man. I might just throw my hands up and play a little bit of the Carolina power play and play like 5% New York 1 and just hope that it happens. I don't know, man. I just don't feel great about it, but I think there's enough reason to back both of these teams in this game tonight.
I mean, I bet the over, so I'm pretty confident the under will hit. We should probably fade this game entirely. The Hurricanes power play feels great. Like, 32nd ranked PK. It's been an atrocious penalty kill all year. So as you mentioned, there's two kind of mini stacks on there, easy to get to. They both look okay at 5v5 as well. I was hoping that the matchup would look a little bit better for Carolina too, because that Netchas Svechnikov duo had my interest, but going up against New York 3 seems a little bit dicey tonight. New York 3 really solid defensive metrics. So I'll probably, like I said, throw my hat in the ring here, but not to a super, super heavy extent. Okay, the Predators and the Rangers. I mean, if you want to talk about a game where you have no idea what's going to happen, this has to be it. Is Robinson a good cheap one-off? I think there are better cheap one-offs tonight, but yeah, playing with Aho and Jarvis, I think he's fine. but there's a lot of fine, cheap one-offs tonight. So I probably would look at like Turcotte ahead of Robinson tonight, just in a better matchup. Here we go. I don't know how to break this game down because it's a shit show. The matchups are not great for the Ranger or the Predator side of things, which is stunning considering the Rangers are just horrendous defensively. The matchups are pretty good on the Rangers side of things. No Artemi Panarin again tonight. So this is what we're going to have. Cooley, Heidel, Lafreniere on the top line, Kreider, Trocheck, Berard on the second line, Kakko, Zibanejad, Riley Smith on the third line. I mean, like, what do you do with these? What do you do? Lafreniere moves up to the top power play unit. The power plays are just completely it's completely broken up across all three lines. I don't know how much faith I really want to put in these defensive metrics for the Rangers, just because we haven't seen these lines really play much together at all. So I would rather just trust the team chart that suggests that they're one of, if not the worst defensive 5v5 teams on this slate, but both teams are. So, you look at these two teams and you look at, okay, yes, Zibanejad and Kreider have been shit this year. There's no Panarin. How are the Rangers going to score? Then you look at the Nashville side of things. It's like no Roman Josi. How are the Predators going to score? Both teams are so bad defensively. You have to think maybe there's some goals here. But then at the same time, both these goalies are very good. If you would have asked us at the start of the season, these are two top 5 goalies in the NHL. So it's how does this game play out? To me, I feel like it's somehow going to be low scoring. I just don't trust that these two offenses are going to be able to take advantage of the defensive deficiencies of both sides. Now, that being said, the Nashville Predators are another one of these teams that you look at them and they're way better on home ice than on the road. So, maybe now in Nashville in a pretty good game environment here against the Rangers, who have struggled defensively, maybe this is a spot to back the Predators. And this top line with Forsberg, Stamkos, and Marchessault's definitely looked better offensively. They're still getting caved defensively. The problem is that they're seeing a good chunk of ownership tonight. It's not crazy. It's second highest, but it's only at 9%. Are you buying in here on this Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault line?
No. I just honestly, it's been such a frustrating team to deal with here, the Nashville Predators this season. I don't know how anybody can confidently play them at 10% as the second highest owned line on the slate tonight. I might just mix in 5% just to say that I did. And if they go off, they go off. I don't think that Nashville one is going to go out and have a night that's going to win you a slate here. And I also don't think that's going to be the case with the New York Rangers. I've probably got a little bit more interest in the Rangers side of things. I kind of like the look of this top line with Hedel, Will Cooley, and Alexis Lafreniere. But beyond that, man, I just really don't like this game whatsoever. It's two struggling teams who cannot seem to get things going. If you were listening to the sheet with Jeff Merrick today, Greg Wyshynski was on there and was kind of joking around with Jeff being like, is this the first team in NHL history to quit on its general manager? Because you look at what Chris Drury's done with this team and it feels very divisive there right now. It's pretty ugly for me. Both goaltenders are drawing quite a bit of ownership tonight in the crease, both coming in around 10%, which is kind of interesting to see as well. And it almost makes me think that the public is also thinking like you, and that this might be a bit of a lower scoring game here. I just don't really know how you can back them with real confidence here. Like I said, I think it's interesting enough to get maybe 5-10% in there. For total exposure to this game and in terms of the forward groups. I just don't know if I can go beyond that.
Yeah, just a heads up, Zach, you are frozen again, but it's still better than the black head box that we normally have for you. And no. But I think the other thing, too, about this game is that both teams, as bad as they've been defensively, their penalty kills have been very... Oh, you're back. Nice. Both these penalty kills have been really, really good. So, yeah, I think that both of us would agree that I think we would be lying to you if we had any confidence in how we think this game is going to play out, because somebody pointed out this matchup is a chaotic turd, and that feels like a pretty good representation of what this game is. It's just chaos. I don't really know. You want to believe that both these teams are good enough, but to me, I lean that this is probably going to be lower scoring and probably a game that I'm going to stay away from. And I think that there's parts of this game that you can get exposure to. That's fine. But like, I don't think like I'm not going to bank my night on trying to figure out how this game is going to play out. Because if it ends up being a 7-8 hockey game and it burns me, then whatever. Like, at least I know that I have no idea what's gonna happen. Does the losing coach from this game get fired tomorrow? Maybe.
Could be.
I mean, it's kind of surprising. Like, it doesn't seem like Nashville has any interest in firing their head coach. And I mean, the Rangers have been in a tailspin forever, and Laviolette's still behind the bench there. So I don't really think that. Like, I'm surprised they're both still there, to be honest with you. The one thing that we should probably continue to mention here, at least from the Rangers side of things, is this Nashville Predators blue line is atrocious. Like, they're missing 3 of the regular 6 defensemen. No Roman Josi. Nobody has really been able to, like, the Avs, I guess, took advantage of it, but like the Stars did nothing. They're kind of just getting by with this makeshift blue line. I don't know how they're doing it, but like, if you want a reason to get interested in the Rangers, I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair argument to make. I can get behind that idea. Maybe that's why we're seeing 10% coming in on Nashville one as the second highest owned line. Again, like I said, I think I'm going to have a little bit of exposure to them. Just to say that I did, and in case they do pop off tonight. But I'll tell you, it's not a line that I'm really feeling confident in here.
A couple weeks ago, or maybe last week, I said when the Red Wings play the Sabres, it's either going to be 2-1 or 6-5. This game feels the same way. It's either going to be no goals or it's going to be all the goals. So pick your side, stick to your guns. The Blues and the Devils. This is a very, very interesting game as well. The Blues offense has really perked up since making the coaching change. The Devils, man, are just the most dominant 5v5 team in the league, but just can't really seem to score. They were in trouble against the Blackhawks the other day until the third period, and they finally exploded. The Devils are pretty sizable road favorites here, minus 183 in St. Louis. In terms of the matchups for this game, pretty solid on both sides. The Blues, defensively, they still haven't been great since the coaching change, but the goaltending's been outstanding. I really like this Devils team. They've just played so well. I just hope that they can kind of get it going and figure it out offensively, because there's a lot to kind of unpack here. The second line has a slightly better matchup. They're both going to basically see just a mix of the top 6, which the top line, or the top 6, for the Blues just isn't all that great defensively. So I do think the top 6 here is in play for the New Jersey Devils side of things, one way or the other. I prefer the Hughes line. I think I liked the Heischer line a little bit more when Stefan Nation was up there. Obviously, that top power play correlation helped. Dawson Mercer's fine. He's actually been pretty decent lately, but I feel a little bit better about that Hughes line for obvious reasons. Jesper Bratt's been great. I don't mind them as a mini stack. It is worth mentioning that St. Louis 1 continues to just be red hot. Robert Thomas, one of the best players in the league right now. He's been awesome. 3.6 expected goals for per 60 for that line. Matchup-wise, like I said, it's kind of middle of the road, so probably not a team that I'm going to get to a ton tonight. The Devils are just, very, very sound defensively. You see here, as a team, 1.94 expected goals against per 60 at 5v5 in their last 10 games. They've been just outstanding, and the offensive metrics are just ridiculous. So this definitely feels like a Devils side that I have interest in. And then you take a look at the power play here. I mean, it's the number 1 power play rank advantage on the slate, number 1 power play versus the 25th ranked PK. This just feels like a great spot for the New Jersey Devils this evening. And then you take a look at the ownership. New Jersey 1 coming in at 3% ownership, and New Jersey 2 coming in at just 4% ownership as our number 3 line to target. This is a really, really interesting spot for New Jersey to me tonight.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I've got quite a bit of interest in the Devils here tonight, to be totally honest. I like building around their power play for all the reasons that you just mentioned right there. Granted, the Blues are fairly disciplined, only 2.6 times shorthanded per game. But, man, they've just been absolutely flying this season. The Devils have. The goal-scoring concerns, I think, are fair to mention. I think it's worth noting, too, that this Devils second line really hasn't been the issue for them. 3.6 goals for per hour of ice time versus 3.3 expected goals for per hour. I think if there's a line to target on the Devils side, if you're building one line, say from the Devils here, I think it is building around that second line, correlating with Dougie Hamilton on the power play, I think is the way to build around them here. I'm definitely going to have exposure to the Devils top line, though. It does feel like a pretty nice spot. St. Louis is really interesting, man. Like you mentioned, I've got quite a bit of interest in this top line. I think I'm going to be coming in over the field on them in my 20 max here by a pretty pretty good margin, which isn't really going to be too hard to do considering they're projecting for 2% ownership as a full stack here tonight on this slate. And the reason for that for me is Jacob Markstrom. He's, been a strong goaltender. He's been good this year for the New Jersey Devils. In his career, though, the Blues have absolutely destroyed him. 17 games played. He only has 4 wins, 3.0 goals against average, and an 885 save percentage. So going to try and see if the past can predict the future a little bit here tonight in this spot. But even beyond that too, like I think the Devils top line, or the Blues top line rather, they're so cheap too. Like that's such a nice thing about them, right? Like Robert Thomas, the most expensive guy at $6,100. Pavel Buchnevich, $4,400. I mean, both of those guys were like high 6, low 7K plays last year at times. So to get them cheaper here, I think is a really nice way to go on this slate.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I'm probably not going to have a ton of St. Louis, but they're definitely in the player pool tonight, probably around 10%. Because, like the matchup obviously is not great, but the price tag is they play about 29-30% of the 5v5 ice time for the Blues. And they're just 14,400 is a really, really good price tag. Just speaking about New Jersey 2 here for a second, Jack Hughes last 8 games, 5 goals, 9 assists, 14 points. Really, really good stuff. Jesper Bratt, 3 goals, 10 assists, 13 points in his last 8. So they've been red hot. Really good matchup here for them tonight. Just to remind you of who is on the New Jersey top power play unit. Obviously, you can go to dailyfaceoff.com whenever you want and get all this info free. But you've got Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt, really the only 2 that are correlating there. This is why I felt better about New Jersey 1 when Stefan Nation was on that top line. But now on that third line, don't feel quite as good about them. But still really, really strong offensive numbers if you want to get there. But I think there's really no reason, given the ownership, to go away from the Hughes-Bratt duo this evening. Okay, Washington and Chicago. The Blackhawks hosting as plus 168 underdogs, minus 188 for the Washington Capitals. Capitals really been one of the best teams in the league this year. Not a great performance a night ago against the Dallas Stars, but the Stars can kind of do that to you. I was really disappointed. I don't know if anybody was watching, but Logan Stankoven missing an empty net at the tail end of that game was really, really crushing for my night. But both teams' top line is going to go head to head tonight, and it looks like a great matchup for both of them. I don't really play the Blackhawks. I'm probably going to stick to my guns here tonight. Don't mind, Connor Bedard on, any slate, but he would be the only one, him and Alex Vlasic, and then maybe some of the cheaper options. I know you've got some numbers on some of their cheap defensemen, but Alex Vlasic's been great. If you want to one-off a defenseman from the Blackhawks, I think that's okay. The power play for the Blackhawks, has been 24th best in the last 10, but they've actually, they're since Seth Jones got hurt, their power play is actually like clicking at like 29%, and they have been really, really good. So not a terrible power play, but they do have a tough matchup tonight. So we'll probably stay away from the Blackhawks for the most part. I do have some interest in this Washington side of things for kind of all the same reasons I had interest in the Washington side of things last night. Now, all of a sudden, they have a much better matchup. Really, really good offensive numbers from that top line. You've got McMichael, you've got Strome together. They correlate in the top power play unit. I really love Jacob Chikrin's price. I played some McMichael and Strome and Chikrin together. It worked early last night. They only, they stopped at 1 goal, but I'm going to go back to the well there with that line again tonight. They grade out in the top 10 tonight. McMichael 6,500, Strome 6,600, just 2% ownership on each of them. And then obviously you've got Jacob Chikrin there at a very reasonable price. Now, the other thing that's worth mentioning is you got obviously a bit of a revenge narrative here with the Dylan Strome going back to Chicago. If you recall, he was, scratched fairly regularly during his time in Chicago, probably not super fond of his days there. And he's really taken his career to that next level in Washington. So interested to see what he does tonight against these Blackhawks. But yeah, really, really nice spot for them. Taylor Radish also got a little bit of a revenge narrative with the Blackhawks as well, if you want to go that route. So I like Washington 1. That's probably the only spot I'm really going to get to in this game. How about you, Zach?
Yeah, I really like the look of this Washington top line here tonight. I think they're in a great spot here on this slate. I'm going to be really comfortable getting over the field 10-15% for them here for me tonight on this slate. It's funny you mentioned Dylan Strome. Since he left Chicago, what is it here? Oh man, can I do the math? 5 points in 4 games played for him against the Chicago Blackhawks. So really don't mind going that way here tonight. Love a good revenge narrative play. I've got tons of interest in this top line. I've got tons of interest in this power play. I've got tons of interest in Chychrun and John Carlson. I think this is a really solid spot here for these teams, or for this team to kind of build around on this slate tonight. I know I was toying around with some Chicago or some Washington 1 exposure on my DFO head-to-head lineup. Couldn't quite get there, so I'm going to have to get a little over the field here, I think, in my 20 max. Chicago 1, I've got tepid interest in them, I think, is kind of the best way to put it. If I'm playing any of the Chicago forwards, it's going to be this top line. Bedard and Donato is a mini stack. Donato, $5,200. He's really getting up there in terms of his price, but just a solid floor. 10.2 shots on goal per hour of ice time. You mentioned the defenseman here, Lucas Crevier at $2,500 minimum price defenseman, 7.3 block shots per hour of ice time, playing on the top pairing. I think he's a great punt defenseman on this slate tonight. Oh, and also one other thing worth noting too, Frank Nazar getting the call up to the Chicago Blackhawks, $2,500 on the second line. He really hasn't done anything thus far early in his NHL career, but that's going to be a spot I think going to be worth monitoring just as we move forward here in this season.
Yeah, also worth mentioning Taylor Hall, game time decision for the Blackhawks on that second line tonight. Okay, next game we've got the Calgary Flames and the Boston Bruins. The Bruins minus 132 road favorites in Calgary. Not sure why. I like the Calgary side of things in this game. This is another one of those teams I mentioned earlier that is just way better on home ice, both offensively and defensively. Obviously, the defensive reasons for that being that they can match up Backlund against the opposition's top line, really kind of take them out. Now, if you want to beat the Boston Bruins, you kind of just take David Pastrnak out of the lineup and you're in good shape. The Bruins, obviously a strong performance the other night against the Canucks, but prior to that, we're as good as dead on this road trip. So I like the Flames tonight. The Flames grade out pretty well. This top line has just some of the most insane offensive metrics that you can find on tonight's slate. The matchup, obviously not great. They're going to see a lot of that Marchand line, the second line. They've been somewhat gettable. They do a really good job suppressing shot attempts against. That's just kind of the Bruins MO because they can't score. So for the most part, I think this game is going to be pretty low scoring. It's not a game that I have an overwhelmingly high interest in. I like Swayman and Dustin Wolf in this game. I prefer Wolf in this Calgary Flames side of things, but do you have any different opinions? Like Calgary won despite having a not so great matchup. They play 31% of the ice time. They grade out tremendously well in the charts at just 12,100 at 5.1% ownership. I am perfectly fine leaving Martin Pospisil off, but like Nazem Kadri's been playing pretty well as of late, and we've really seen some resurgence out of Jonathan Huberdeau recently as well. So this is a line that I don't mind getting to tonight at really low ownership that can kind of stay hot. Just to give you an idea of Jonathan Huberdeau's recent run of play in his last 10 games, 5 goals, 5 assists, 10 points. During that time. Really no floor to speak of, just 1.7 shots on goal per game. Nazem Kadri has also been quite good. If you just bear with me while I pull up his numbers in his last, he's scored goals in 3 consecutive games. And in his last, let's go back to the 15th of November. His last 14 games, 6 goals, 6 assists, 12 points, 47 shots on goals. Shot volume perfectly makes up for Jonathan Huberdeau's lack of shot volume. So them as a mini stack tonight feels pretty good to me. Zach, you going to get there tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to get there. They're my Calgary Flames, man. I got to get there on a slate like this. I think there's more than enough reason to have interest in the Calgary side of things here. I'm not going to be going super heavy on them. I'll probably have 5, maybe 10% total ownership on the Calgary side. I think the top line is really interesting, and I have interest in this second line too. Obviously, it's a bit of a tough.
No way.
I know, shocking, right? The big reason too, Blake Coleman is back with Michael Backlund and Matt Coronado. They mixed it up for a little bit. They tried to change things. And then Ryan Huska just remembered, oh yeah, these 3 guys are really good together. So pretty smart to put them back together as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, like Coleman did nothing when they weren't together. So he's like, yeah, this works. Let's put him back with Backlund. It was shocking, honestly, how long it lasted. Any interest in the Bruins side of things for you tonight?
Not really. I like Dustin Wolf as a play tonight. I think he's a really solid goaltending option coming in at $7,400, only 2.4% ownership. He had 11.8 DraftKings points in his 1 game against Boston in his career. I think that was earlier this season. They were on the road in Boston, though, which is worth noting. I think Wolf's been a little stronger on that Calgary Saddledome ice so far this season. So no real interest in the Boston side of things. If I'm getting a little freaky. Maybe I'll mix in one Boston, one lineup tonight. It does feel like a bit of an ugly spot. Interesting power play matchups for both sides. I mean, these are two pretty undisciplined teams. I don't hate getting some exposure to this game through the power play too. I just don't think that that's a spot that I'm necessarily going to tonight.
As you mentioned, 4-3 overtime win for the Bruins in their first meeting of the season. 2 assists for David Pastrnak. Pavel Zacha had a goal and an assist. Brad Marchand had 8 shots on goal and a goal in that game. I actually don't mind Brad Marchand. I've been playing him quite a bit. That second line's got better offensive numbers than the top line. Matchup-wise tonight, they're going to avoid that backline line. They're going to see a lot more of that Kadri line. The Kadri line, 3.8 goals against per 60. Like that, Marchand as a one-off is probably the only play that I would really strongly consider on the Bruins side of things tonight. Okay, 2 games left. We've got the Seattle Kraken and the Ottawa Senators. The Senators have suddenly found their legs, and they've really caught fire. I've talked about them a lot early in the season of just being a team that was really hard to figure out who they were because you would see just outstanding performances out of them, and then all of a sudden they would just be dog shit the next night. 5-1 win over the Ducks kind of got things started. Then a 3-0 shutout win in Carolina is really a statement game. And then on the back-to-back going up against the Penguins and winning 3-2 in overtime. Pretty nice run here from the Sens. Linus Ullmark has just been an absolute difference maker for them. They're minus 127 road favorites. In terms of the matchups tonight, pretty bleak on both sides. Both teams have been fairly good defensively. I think that, the Kraken are basically just the most mediocre team ever. They're mediocre offensively. They're mediocre defensively. Their power play is mediocre. Their penalty kills just average. Like, they're just so boring. Not really a whole lot to write home about on this Seattle side of things. Obviously, Seattle 3 continues to stand out offensively. They've been really good. Bjorkstrand, Wright, and Tolvanen. If you want to get there, their matchup is not great. They're going to see a mix of kind of the top 9 here for the Senators tonight, but they've been red hot. So if you want to just kind of ride that hot streak, they look okay. Really, really good stuff here from this top line of the Sens recently. The Tkachuk, Norris, and Batherson line has been awesome. And given the recent changes, it's really kind of just like taking the decision-making out of the Ottawa Senators before you had to kind of decide whether it was the Stützle line, whether it was the Tkachuk line. Now it's pretty clear that it's the Tkachuk line. All of a sudden, maybe it's the argument is the Tkachuk line or the Shane Pinto line, because the Shane Pinto line's really come alive as of late, but I still don't think they have all that much offensive upside. So Ottawa 1 to me is pretty interesting tonight. Overall, they grade out 25th at 19,900. Not the best score there, but just 3.7% ownership. To me, this feels like a lower scoring game, probably not one that I have all that much interest in. Do you have any differing feelings than me on this game? As I quickly mentioned, Seattle Kraken 13th best power play advantage, 7th best power play advantage for the Ottawa Senators tonight.
Really no differing opinions. Just a couple of things to add, honestly. The third line for Seattle is probably the line that I would target if I was playing any of them. Worth noting, Shane Wright is on an absolute heater right now. 6 goals, 12 points in his last 11 games played. If I'm playing anybody on the Ottawa side of things, it's going to be Ottawa 1 around Brady Tkachuk, $9,100. I mean, he has been just awesome this season. One other thing that's kind of interesting to me is the goaltenders in this matchup. I think I like playing both Ullmark and Decord here tonight. Linus Ullmark starting to figure it out. He is finally starting to put it together. 20 games played this season, up to a 910 save percentage, up to 5.1 goals saved above expected. I think both goaltenders are fine plays on this slate tonight. I'm
pretty sure that Linus Ullmark's red hot run perfectly coincides with you calling him a system goaltender on this show. I think you fixed him.
Take credit for that one.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, moving on to the final game of the night. We've got the San Jose Sharks and the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets obviously look like they're in a pretty good spot tonight against the San Jose team that has not been great. When they met earlier this year, wasn't it like 8-1? If I recall correctly,
something like that.
8-3, actually. 8-3 on October 18th. Just an absolute shit pumping of the San Jose Sharks. That evening, Vladislav Nemestikov, 4 points. Cole Perfetti, 4 points. Neil Pionk, 4 points. I remember us talking about this game. This was way back in the when we were still talking about the Winnipeg Jets flow chart. And we were like, no, flow chart be damned. We're on Winnipeg 1 tonight. And then Winnipeg 2 had the game of games. And I think I lost all my money. So what are you doing with them tonight? Well, the matchups are obviously really, really good from the Winnipeg Jets side of things. Not so great from the San Jose Sharks side of things. Obviously, Winnipeg won in a really good spot tonight. The line plays a ton, 32% of the ice time. They've been really, really solid. Second line's okay. Third line's okay. It's just kind of all the usual suspects. Let's just pull up the overall rankings here. Winnipeg won grades out as the best line on the slate at just $20,200. Velarde's price tag still super affordable at $4,700. They're seeing just 8.5% projected ownership. Obviously love that. They grade out number 1 overall based on the charts. If you take a look at the just raw line projection tonight, they grade out number 3. So they are just in a really good spot here at fairly modest ownership, really. I do think Winnipeg too, like not just because they smashed the first time, but I do think they're okay. You've got Perfetti at $3,500 to 7.2% ownership. Nemestikov, $3,200, 5%. Chipkov at $3K at $3,900. His shot volume has been unbelievable since coming up from the AHL. I think he's a really strong value option at $3,000. I don't know how much I'm going to full stack this line, but I mean, at $9,700, they're in worse spots. We've already seen them do it this year. So we always talk about this as kind of like a Winnipeg 3 type game if they could have success, but like on a 10-game slate, I just won't get there. On the Sharks side of things, the matchups obviously aren't great. They are going to continue to shuffle up their lineups tonight, or their lines tonight as well. You're going to see Gaudreau with Granlund and Zetterlund. Just really takes all interest out of that line for me. Kovalenko, Celebrini, Toffoli would be the line that kind of piques my interest the most. The matchup, though, is quite bleak. They're going to see a lot of that Lowry line, a lot of that fourth line for the Jets, which both those lines have been very good defensively, specifically that fourth line as of late. So, probably not a ton of interest in that Sharks side of things, but that Celebrini line with Kovalenko and Toffoli has been really quite good. So if you're going to play the Sharks tonight, that would be the route to go for me. Where do they grade out overall? Because I'm blind. I can't type either. They are 35th at $13,100. Kovalenko minimum price. Celebrini 4%. Toffoli 4%. Zach, what are you doing with the Jets and the Sharks? Before you answer that question, over 1,160 people watching right now on all our different channels, over 100 on YouTube. If you all click the like button, we'll finally get over 100 likes on a video. It seems pretty simple. The math is there. We've done all the hard work. We've done all the math for you on this show. You could just contribute one little like for our math. That would be great. Zach, what are you doing with the Jets and the Sharks?
I'm playing the Winnipeg Jets.
Oh, shocking.
Pretty shocking. And probably a pretty fair amount of them, too. I mean, Winnipeg won projecting for 8.5% ownership. It feels like they should be higher owned than that here on this slate. So if the public's not going to play them, I have no issue going ahead and getting over the field on them here. I think it's a great spot for them. Obviously, you mentioned that last game. Winnipeg won, didn't really get there in that game. I think this is the opportunity now for that course to kind of correct. They're fairly expensive, $20,200, but they're more than enough value spots here on this huge slate to get there. I've got interest in the second line. I think I've probably got more interest in the third line than you do. I think they're in a really nice spot here as a cheap punt play. Not going to go crazy with them or anything like that, but I don't mind utilizing these middle six players as one-off plays either. Ranging from $2,700 up to $3,500. I think there's some interesting one-offs in this area here. Pretty simple for me tonight, honestly, on this game, man. I've got a lot of interest in this Jets side of things. Don't mind building around their power play either. The Sharks are a pretty undisciplined team, taking 3.4, or they're shorthanded 3.4 times per game. Even though they grade out with a solid penalty kill, this is a pretty potent Jets power play unit as well. Love the Jets in the spot here tonight.
Yeah. That is this is actually just one. This is a perfect way to wrap up the game section of the show. Georgiev is garbage.
Sums it up pretty well. Thank you, Jake.
Yes, sums it up great. I did say though the other day, I'm like, just watch Georgiev just be suddenly pretty good in San Jose, and I mean he played fairly well. I guess he gave up 3 goals and 20 shots, so yeah, he's still garbage. Okay. Let's get to the defensemen and the goalies before we get to our daily faceoff head-to-head and our hat-trick pick challenge. That is the wrong page. Defensemen tonight, sort by value here first. Who stands out? I mean, Erik Karlsson at $4,700 feels okay. I still like Brady Shea and the amount of minutes he plays. Victor Hedman, we talked about him being a great play. Brett Pesce's price just does not change. Just keep playing Brett Pesce. Mikey Anderson, inexplicably, grades out well tonight. I don't know why. Probably not going to really get there. Braden Schneider is a guy you really like. Obviously, going to see some additional minutes now with the injuries there. It is worth mentioning that if you're looking for a cheap Rangers defenseman tonight, Zach Jones is expected to move up to the top pairing with Adam Fox. Could go, could do worse than that tonight. Chychrun, really love him. Letang's been on a bit of a hot run. Don't mind McDonough, going to play big minutes still for those Tampa Bay Lightning. Shakir Mukhamadullin, man, a shot blocking machine at minimum price if you want to go to the San Jose Sharks tonight. Anybody that really sticks out to you, Zach? Man, Vlasic up to $5,100.
Yeah, Vlasic is up there. Mackenzie Weegar at that same price, $6,100. I think he's a really solid play here tonight, going up against the Boston Bruins. I think he summarized it pretty well here. I think, there's some interesting punt defensemen here, looking for some shot block value. Lucas Crevier, I mentioned him earlier. David Savard at $2,900, blocks just a ton of pills. Alexander Romanov, $3,100. I'm probably going to pass there. Pesci at $3K is probably one of my favorite plays on this slate. Muka Madulin, I like him here tonight too. Should be a lot of shots going the way of the San Jose Sharks net. Yeah, that was
Muka Madulin is definitely feels like a reasonable punt option. Not playing a ton, that's the issue, right? Last year he came up, he played like 18 minutes a night. Now they actually have a reasonable blue line. He's around projected for 15 minutes, which is kind of the only knock on him, but blocks a lot of shots when he's out there. That is for sure. Darren Radish, we'll just have to bring him up just because like he is obviously a good play if Hedman is ruled out. If Hedman isn't ruled out, then Radish is probably not as good of a play. But if he doesn't play, then, he's going to be on the top power play unit. That's always a good thing. Let's sort by projections here really quickly. Connor Hellebuck grades as the number one goalie to target tonight at $8,500, followed by UC Saros. Projected to see a decent amount of shot volume tonight, fairly low implied total, 2.8. Vasilevsky feels okay as well. You talked about it, man. Like, that Rangers Nashville game is drawing a lot of ownership between the pipes, and it's just like just so much chaos. It's hard to really figure out. Darcy Kemper projected to be the highest owned goalie on the slate against the Penguins. It's okay, I guess. I think I prefer Allmark at $6,400 or at $7,600, excuse me, 6.4% ownership over Kemper. How about you?
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I think Allmark's a pretty solid play here tonight. I really like the look of him. Logan Thompson at $8,200 if he gets a start. I think he's a solid play here tonight too. Don't really know how high you have to get in terms of the dollar figures here on this slate tonight. I think most of the guys that I'm really looking to play tonight are kind of in those mid 7K ranges. I think that's kind of the way that I'm going to be building around the goaltenders here tonight.
Yeah, Dustin Wolf, $7,400. Love him tonight. Probably my favorite play. Him and Allmark are probably my two favorites on this slate. Do you have any overwhelming favorites of yours?
Joey Decord, Linus Ullmark, Logan Thompson, Dustin Wolf, probably the four guys that I'm mainly going to build around here tonight.
There you have it. If you want to participate in today's Hat Trick Pick Challenge, comment your Hat Trick Pick in the comment section of the video on YouTube. If you your player scores a hat trick, will get you a $25 gift card to nationgear.ca. Pick up some DFO swag. While you're commenting, though, make sure you drop a like for the fellas. Okay, before we get to the hat trick pick challenge, though, let's get to today's daily face-off head-to-head. If you were here yesterday, we had some controversy as we did not know who won last Thursday's contest, but I was fairly confident that my lineup absolutely flopped and you won, and that was confirmed today. Plus, you won yesterday, bringing it to a tie at 21-21. Neither one of us can create any separation. It's always just like one hot streak, another hot streak, So take it away here, Zach, with your lineup tonight.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, some interesting spots here on the slate tonight, right? Tampa 2, really like them. Sorelli, Brandon Hagel. Winnipeg 1, I mean, they're just in such a smash spot. I had to figure out a way to work them in. Kyle Connor and Gabe Velarde as a mini stack. A couple of one-off plays here tonight in the forward ranks. Tage Thompson at $8,200. Really like him tonight going up against the Habs. Alex Turcotte, minimum price. I like him tonight too. Brett Pesce, $3K. I mean, how can you not play Brett Pesce at $3K? And Lucas Crevier at $2,500. Really like him as a punt defenseman. And then Logan Thompson, probably my favorite goaltending play here tonight on this slate.
Yeah, so as I said yesterday, we're not necessarily always building lineups to beat each other as much as we're kind of building lineups to showcase, the lines that we like and things, ways you can build around them. So obviously not a great cash build again for me tonight, more of a GPP build, but just wanted to show that you can, what you can do with Tampa Bay 2 tonight. They're in such a good spot, and you can play them with literally one of the best lines on the entire slate as a full stack and still not really punt away your defenseman by any stretch. So went with the full Tampa 2 stack. They correlate nicely with Ryan McDonough, who's at $3,100. Brady Shea with Roman Josi has been playing like 27 minutes a night, $4,100. I like getting to Brady Shea tonight as well. Then Dustin Wolf between the pipes. So full stack of Tampa 1, full stack of Winnipeg 1, two of my favorite lines in the entire slate, easily fit together. Zach, since you won yesterday's head-to-head, you also get to go first with today's Hat Trick Pick Challenge. Again, if you want to participate in today's Hat Trick Pick Challenge, comment section of the video on YouTube. Drop your Hat Trick Pick in there, not the live chat, below. Okay, Zach, who are you going with?
Let's go with Tage Thompson. See if the big man can get it done tonight.
Fair enough. I'm going to go with Brandon Hagel. I'm all in. Tampa Bay 2 to the moon. That's going to do it for this edition of the DFS report. Quick, before we go, shout out to our friends at rotogrinders.com for providing us with projected ownership for today's show. If you want to get $20 off your first month, RotoGrinders NHL Premium, you can do so by clicking the link in the description of the video on YouTube. Take everything you learned in today's show, put it in their optimizer, build the optimal lineup for tonight's slate. And also, if you want to join the DFS Discord, there's a link in the description of the video on YouTube to join. We're talking DFS all day. Also, we provide all the late breaking news and warm-ups, making sure you're stacking the right lines. They haven't changed in warm-ups. You're not missing any injuries. Victor Hedman's out, or if he's in, we will let you know in the DFS Discord. So join it. A lot of fun there. Before we go, a couple of quick questions here. Favorite single entry line to target? I mean, it's Tampa 2 for me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I think they are the SE line to target tonight.
And Diego says, thanks, guys. Great show as always. Thank you guys for tuning in. Smash that like button. I mean, this has been the highest viewed show of the season across the board. So if you could be so kind, smash that like button for us. Get us a record as we continue to try to build this new DFO fantasy and betting channel. Thank you guys so much. Best of luck tonight. Hopefully you return with more money in your bankroll tomorrow than you had tonight. Until then, cheers.
Cheers.